One of the most influential people of the 19th century was Harriet Tubman. She was born as Araminta Ross in Dorchester County, Maryland, sometime in the years 1820 to 1822. However, her exact birth date is not known. Her parents, Harriet Green and Benjamin Ross, had 9 children, including Araminta. She was later nicknamed Minty by her parents. Minty was rented out as a nursemaid at age 5. Her first resistance to slavery was noted when she was just 12 years old. Her master, Edward Brodess, was about to severely punish an enslaved man, but wanting to help the slave, Minty stepped in and stopped the beating. While stopping this beating, a weight hit her head and she therefore suffered a lifetime of headaches, narcolepsy, and sometimes seizures. Moreover, in 1844, when Minty was 25 years old, she married John Tubman. Sometime after her marriage, Minty changed her name to Harriet Tubman, taking her mother's birth name and her husband's last name. When her enslaver, Edward Brodess, died, his wife had some debts she needed to pay off, and that meant selling slaves. With the fear of being sold and separated from her family, Harriet Tubman planned to escape to freedom with her 2 brothers, Ben and Henry. However, for whatever reason, Ben and Henry changed their minds and decided to go back to Maryland. While the first attempt to escape with her brothers was unsuccessful, Harriet escaped soon after by herself, without her husband or brothers to help. In 1849, she traveled 90 miles with the help of the Underground Railroad through Delaware and finally settled in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. In Philadelphia, Harriet found work as a housekeeper and found support among other abolitionists. But she wasn't truly happy being without her family. Over the next 10 years, Harriet Tubman would make at least 13 trips back to Maryland and bring more than 70 slaves to their freedom. Unfortunately, her husband refused to join her in Philadelphia, and he eventually married a free black woman. Harriet Tubman was officially made a conductor of the Underground Railroad in 1850. Because of Tubman's familiarity with the woods and stars, she successfully led her passengers to freedom. Harriet claimed, quote, "I was the conductor of the Underground Railroad for 8 years, and I can say what most conductors can't say. I never ran my train off the track, and I never lost a passenger," close quote. Nevertheless, because of the passing of the Fugitive Slave Act of 1850, this made Tubman's trips to Maryland and back more dangerous and difficult. This act allowed for the recapture of runaway slaves in any territory of the United States and imposed penalties on any person who assisted in their escape. Tubman decided to move her slaves further north, sometimes even into Canada, to prevent recapture. She also carried a gun for her own protection and to encourage her passengers to keep moving and to not have second thoughts. A famous abolitionist, William Lloyd Garrison, gave Harriet Tubman the name of Moses because she led many people to safety. In addition, because of her huge success in the Underground Railroad and leading many slaves through the country to freedom, she offered her services to the Union Army during the Civil War. She became a cook and a nurse, and then eventually an armed scout and spy. After moving to South Carolina to provide nursing care for the soldiers there, she started scouting the land behind Confederate lines. Tubman quickly learned the lay of the land, and in 1863 she became the head of an espionage and scouting network for the Union. In fact, on June 2nd of 1863, under the command of Union Colonel James Montgomery, Tubman became the first woman to lead an armed expedition in a war. The Combahee Ferry raid was successful in liberating more than 700 slaves from Confederate territory. Overall, Harriet Tubman was influential in helping thousands of slaves find freedom in the North through the Underground Railroad and her work in the Civil War. After the Civil War, Tubman joined forces with prominent women's suffrage abolitionists such as Elizabeth Cady Stanton and Susan B. Anthony. Eventually, the influential abolitionist known as Harriet Tubman died on March 10th in 1913 from pneumonia. She was buried at Fort Hill Cemetery with military honors. Tubman has influenced several emancipation efforts all over the world, and her legacy and fame lives on. In fact, on April 20th, 2016, the United States Treasury Department announced plans to replace Andrew Jackson with Harriet Tubman on the $20 bill. Clearly, the efforts of Harriet Tubman had long-term effects on the future of the United States and other countries around the world, and she will be revered for the rest of time.